The article I'm going to go over is titled Ukraine War Unifies Kings of the East. A fearsome fact proven true. The Russia China alliance, and this is from the Trumpet magazine, and I will put a link to it in the description box below. But it was written by Stephen Fleury on March 7th, 2023. Now, we all know there is an alliance, a long-standing alliance between Russia and China. We know that Russia is currently engaged in a war with Ukraine and that the United States is supplying Ukraine with basically everything they need: money, um, ammunition, weapons, and whatever. So, are we really helping Ukraine, or are we actually at war with Russia through the Ukraine? Now, I'm on the side of we're at war with Russia through the Ukraine. So, what's going to happen if China steps in and gets involved? Let's take a look at what this article says. Russia's full scale invasion of Ukraine has entered its second year, and the world is watching China's response. A number of military analysts believe this year will be the gruesome stalemate between the capacity of the United States to supply Ukraine with weapons and Russia's capacity to suffer casualties and keep fighting. But China could break the deadlock. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told CBS News on February the 18th that China was considering giving Russia weapons and ammunition to use in the Ukraine war. So we're already on rocky ground with China. And it's pretty sad because if you look at it, China pretty much owns us. Everything that we buy, everything, all of our goods and everything, say, made from China. We've shut down our factories. We've given most of our production over to China. So if China gets involved in this war, are we going to, kind of be helping the Ukraine, or are we actually going to be going to war with Russia and China through the Ukraine? We've been concerned from day one about that possibility, Blinken told Face the Nation. In fact, if you go back to the very first conversations that President Biden and President Xi Jinping had about Russia's war of aggression against the Ukraine just a couple of weeks into the war, President Biden shared with President Xi our deep concern about the possibility China would provide lethal support to Russia in this effort, as well as engage in a systematic invasion of sanctions. And the reason for that concern was just weeks before the aggression, you'll remember that President Xi, President Putin, and President Putin had a meeting in which they just talked about a partnership with no limits. So, what is a partnership with no limits? That means a partnership that there's no limit to what they'll do together, whether it be, pretty much try to take over the world. Because we all know, U.S. has always been the superpower in the world, but China, in my humble opinion, believe it's bypassed us on that. I believe that they have a stronger economy. I believe that their military, even, in my opinion, I mean, our military is outstanding. Don't get me wrong. I respect and support all of our men and women in the armed forces, but we're dwindling down our resources. We're giving it all into Ukraine. So where is that going to leave us, as far as military wise? Biden confirmed that Chinese companies have been providing non-lethal military aid to Russia, but they are preparing to possibly provide weapons. And this is a game-changing development, and it truly is, because if China starts providing weapons to Russia to fight the Ukraine, that means we're going to have to start pouring more and more of our resources. I mean, we've already poured an astronomical amount of resources into this. So where is that going to leave us if we have to send our military to fight a war. It could quickly get yet more dangerous if China draws on powers from its own alliance, BRICS, which is the Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South America. BRICS controls 24% of the world's economy and 40% of its people. So it is a formidable foe even for a global superpower. Now, 24% may not sound like much on the surface, but if you really think you take the world's money and you uh, think, okay, well, this one alliance here controls 24% of that, that's astronomical. Even though it doesn't say, oh, okay, 24%, but in reality, that's a whole lot. And 40% of its people. That's almost half. If Russia ever joined forces with China, American global hegemony, its power would end instantly. And it would. Fox News host Tucker Carlson warned on February 20th. You'd have the world's largest land mass and largest natural gas reserves, which is Russia, allied with the world's largest population and the world's largest economy, which is China. So a Russia China axis would be not just more powerful than the United States, but much more powerful. It would have the scale to control a lot of the world's economy and trade routes and raw materials. It could project military force that, posturing aside, we actually don't have the power to stop. China's military is huge. And if you watch my video from yesterday, they've upped their defense spending by like $16 billion. That's a lot. So why are they increasing the spending into their military if they aren't planning on doing something? If you have been following the trumpet for a while, you have been hearing a warning just like that for 30 years. The trumpet forecast a Russia-China alliance when no one was discussing it, when the Russians and Chinese themselves hadn't fully formed it. Now you're hearing about it on the biggest news commentary show in America. Carlson criticized Biden for pushing Russia and China together with his reckless response to Putin's Ukraine invasion. Yet, what even Carlson does not understand is that Russia and China have been in a secret alliance for decades. Chinese dictator Mao Zedong made a public break with the Soviet Russia after Joseph Stalin died, but this break was a clever ruse to ultimately establish a world federation of communist states. In his 1984 book, New Lies for Old KGB defector Anatoly Golistin warned the U.S. not to trust China. And we've seen the warning signs there for years and years and years and years, but yet we've turned everything over. If you think about it, China literally owns the United States. If we didn't get stuff imported from China, our goods and things like that, and plus we shut down our factories. Most everything that we have is made where? China. And China owns hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland in the U.S. Why? Why would we sell our land to them? He noted that after the Second World War, the threat of monolithic Stalinist communism drove the West into military and political alliances such as NATO, SEATO, which is the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, and the Baghdad Pact. The communist world could not defeat NATO through force of arms, so it attacked through deception instead. Russia and China coordinated policies in secret while appearing to be weak and disunited. The idea to make the U.S. reliant upon China while simultaneously destroying NATO by luring Europe into an anti-American alliance. And it worked. We are fully reliant on China for everything, just about. People did not believe Gulistan, but the events have played out as he predicted. The U.S. government is not willing to stand up to China because of its economic connections to China. In Germany, the leading nation in Europe, is trying to be pro US and pro Russia at the same time. You can't. You can't be pro US and pro Russia at the same time. Biden can try to sweet talk China out of sending armaments to help Russia in Ukraine, but it won't do much good because China does not want America to win the Ukraine war. Communist China wants to keep the US distracted long enough for the Politburo to create a Russia China axis that joins with Germany and Europe to dominate the world's economy and destroy the United States. And that's what they've wanted that for a long time. I mean, everybody wants to see the United States fall. And if you really take a look at what's going on in the United States, we are not far from destruction. We're not, because our economy, our dollar is tanking. All of our goods and stuff are made overseas, China. Our factories have been, most of our factories have been shut down. China now owns hundreds of thousands of acres of land in the United States. Pretty much, it's working. Gostin was able to make such an accurate predictions even before the Soviet Union fell because he deeply understood the communist mind. Yet, even more impressive is the fact that the late theologian Herbert W. Armstrong was able to make similar predictions even before China's communist revolution. How? He understood Bible prophecy. And this is all written in the Bible. If you look at prophecy and you take time to read and try to understand prophecy, I know a lot of it's hard to understand, but if you really take a look at it, you'll see that this has all been written. 5 years before World War II and 15 years before the communists took over China, in the June-July 1934 Plain Truth, Mr. Armstrong proclaimed, Scripture prophesies two great military powers to arise in the last day. One, the revival of the Roman Empire by a federation of 10 nations in the territory of the ancient Roman Empire. The other, Russia with her allies. Mr. Armstrong then suggested that Russia's most likely allies would be China and Japan. That was a bold prediction at the time. China and Japan were enemies of Russia in the 1930s. They were at war with each other during the late 1930s and early 1940s. But China is not an enemy of Russia anymore. Mao formed a strong alliance with Stalin in 1949. That alliance endured for almost 75 years. The West fell for the fake Russia-China split. U.S. President Richard Nixon opened up trade relations with Communist China, a move he later said was his greatest mistake, and poof, here we are. We're mostly relying on China for everything now. How did Mr. Armstrong know that the Russians and Chinese would form what they are now calling a partnership of no limits? He understood Bible prophecy, including a specific prophecy in Ezekiel 38:2, which says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. There is a general agreement among students of prophecy that Gog, in the land of Magog, is the vast regions of northern Eurasia extending from the Baltic to the Pacific, Mr. Armstrong wrote. Meshech is Moscow, Tubal is Tobolsk. The Bible margin says Prince of Rosh, which is Russia. This prophecy shows that Russia will be the lead nation in the end-time Asian Confederacy. Both China and Japan are at least partially descended from the Mongoloid people who inhabit eastern Siberia. Watch for them to join Russia in this quest to dominate the continent and beyond. Another prophecy in Revelation 9:16 through 18 describes the end time combat force of 200 million soldiers. Only the Asian continent in the modern age could produce such a military, and Russia could never amass it without China. The Russia Ukraine war is exposing that although Joe Biden may be beholden to China, the Chinese Communist Party is not beholden to the Biden administration. It is now a clear fact China is and has been allied with Russia. Well, I've known that. I mean, that's not really anything new if you pay attention to things going on around the world. Both Ukraine and America are about to discover this fact the hard way as NATO disintegrates the US led world order disintegrates and the US led world order gives way to the new world order dominated by the two power blocks, a revived Holy Roman Empire and what the Bible calls the kings of the East, a Russia China axis. So, whether you believe in the Bible or not, it's pretty much written there in prophecy that this is going to come to pass. And there's not anything we can do about it, really. And just watch and be aware of things that are going on. But, God tells us don't fear, even though I think it's normal human nature to be kind of nervous about these things that are coming to pass. So keep your eyes open and keep your ears listening because I think things are fixing to get a little bit rocky. Until next time, y'all have a good day.